That's Mr. Grothman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Thank you. At least before redistricting, I know that's true anymore, I had more manufacturing jobs in my district than any other district in the country. And I frequently hear two things. First of all, the level of regulation compared to even 10 or 12 years ago, when I don't think we had a crisis of underregulation in the state, in this country 10 or 12 years ago, but the cost of new regulation and the degree to which business owners telling me they never could have begun their company today because you have to pile on these regulations one by one, but to get all these regulations when your major goal should be to produce a product and get it out the door would have made it impossible to start the company in the first place. I would like you to comment on the cost of, and by the way, I have never heard of anybody, ever in a million years, saying we should go back to the days of 1950 when we just put chemicals in the water. The chances of that happening are zero. But I'd like a comment from, we can say, Dr. White, as to the cost of regulations on a big business, a big multinational business, or the small guy, and the cost of regulations in the United States compared to our competitors in other countries.
Thank you, Congressman. As it happens, I'm going to be spending next week in your state, near Eagle River, where I'm going to be enjoying not just the cheese that was discussed earlier, but also nature and being out and enjoying nature. It's important to pursue both of these aims. And to your point, Congressman, I just want to say, first of all, big businesses can certainly bear the costs of these things more than smaller businesses. And the effect of that is a loss of innovation, a loss of startups, a loss of new jobs. We're often spurred to act in favor of regulation because of accidents and disasters, and that's a good thing. But we also need to be spurred towards caution of overregulation and the cumulative cost of regulations because of the other disasters that don't attract headlines, the disasters of families that don't have enough employment income, jobs that are lost, innovations and startups that are lost. The opportunity also, the lost opportunity for the United States and its small businesses and large businesses to supply the world with natural resources that we can produce much more cleanly and safely than other nations. Each of those is a disaster, and it's a disaster that we guard against through smart regulatory analysis, looking at not just the benefits of regulation, but also the costs, and making sure it's transparent.
Do you think sometimes, and I wonder about this sometimes, I can think of examples leading in this direction, that big business likes regulation because they know it forces out the little guy? I mean, if you have 6 factories with 1,000 employees each, you can adapt to the regulations a lot more than some startup with 40 employees. Do you believe that kind of behind some of these regulations, it's a way for big business to hurt the little guy?
Well, I remember a decade ago when I was a lawyer helping to represent a community bank that filed the original constitutional lawsuit against Dodd-Frank. I was struck by statements from the leaders of major banks who would often say that the large regulatory programs like Dodd-Frank were the moat that kept competition from smaller upstarts at bay.
Exactly. I wish you'd kind of repeat that a little. The people who like the big regulations are the big guy who can, spread the cost of learning about them over a variety of different branches or different factories or whatever. And that's why I can think of examples here of big businesses who contact me because they are for big regulations because they know it keeps the little guy at bay. And banking is one area of that, right? You get the little bank with 15 employees, it's a lot harder to get up to speed as far as what's going on than one of these big national dealies, right?
Yes, sir. Surely the larger companies and larger banks would like to do away with a lot of regulation themselves, but at the very least, they know that they are in a better position to bear the costs, and a lot of these regulatory frameworks force consolidation among the smaller banks, regional banks, smaller companies into bigger companies, creating a lack of competition and reinforcing a lot of the problems that we see today.
I'll give you, guys, any one of you can jump in on this. One area I've also felt there's way too much regulation is in the nursing home industry. And I felt that way 30 years ago, in which nurses who worked there would tell me they spend all day filling out paper, and didn't have enough time for their patients. Would any of you like to comment on that? The percentage of man-hours in a nursing home spent filling out paperwork as opposed to spending your time taking care of the older generation?
Congressman, I'll take that. There's the discussion about whether we want regulation or deregulation. I just note that in 2018, I believe our single biggest deregulatory action, categorized as deregulatory action, was a reduction in the paperwork associated with exactly what you just said, in nursing homes, inpatient hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, home health care providers. It made almost no material changes to the standards themselves. It just reduced the interval of reporting. And just that reduction in paperwork generated $8.2 billion in regulatory savings. That's an extraordinary figure across the government, and again, making almost no material change at all to the actual standard themselves.
But the reduction in some of the standards of care did result in a higher proportion of people in nursing homes dying during the COVID pandemic than senior citizens in their own homes or in hospitals generally. And the nursing home industry clearly suffered a huge loss of life at that time.
Yeah, and that was a tragic situation that would have lasted longer if it weren't for Operation Warp Speed, which was a deregulation that President Trump did in the FDA and got the vaccines quickly to the first and foremost the nursing home residents.
Thank you.